Hello, everybody. Look at these guys on your screen. Ira Schofel, managing editor of Warchant.com. Tom Lang, director of original content, Warchant.com. And me, Aslan Hajavani, director of digital media for Warchant.com. The Ultimate Seminoles sports source. You know what this is. It's the Warchant Report powered by Cummins. Head to shop.cummins.com where you can save 10% by using the promo code TAILGATE, TAILG, on the P2500i portable generator, as well as portable power stations, the 200 model, the 300 model, the 600 model. And oh yeah, that one there, that's the 1000. That's the biggest one they make up on the pillar here in the Midtown offices. Shop.cummins.com. Again, promo code TAILGATE, TAILG8, a Florida State alum, high on that corporate ladder, making it happen for you folks. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. Come hang out with Tom Lang, Jeff Cameron, and the crew over at Hotel Indigo for the pregame show. If you don't have plans for the primetime showdown between Florida State and Duke, doors open 4 o'clock, Hotel Indigo, 4:30, showtime. Jeff and Tom getting you ready for the big game. ABC 7:30, gentlemen. Florida State hosting Duke. Ends a 3-game homestand. Florida State seemingly been home for like over a month. It's going to be a fun one when this one happens and toe meets leather, as our guy Gene Deckerhoff would say. Let's start it off with this one here, Ira. You know, the sort of thing that needs to be stated before we even go any further is that we realize this team is 6-0. They're undefeated. They're top 5. They're top 4. They would be in the playoff if it all ended. So these aren't so much criticisms as nuanced discussions on the margins of what needs to happen maybe moving forward to fulfill your potential. But that all said, what's been more over-scrutinized here recently in your mind, Ira? Has it been some of the game management decisions from Mike Norvell, or has it been Jordan Travis's sort of fidelity to staying in the pocket and showing everybody that he is a quote-unquote true quarterback?
Yeah, I don't, the game decisions. I mean, the only thing that really popped up, I think, was this past game where, there were a couple of questionable decisions on 4th downs and down near the red zone. But other than that, I think Mike Norvell is probably done a very good job. And I don't think there has been a lot of criticism. There's been a lot of conversation and I understand it about Jordan and what they're doing with the passing game and why maybe it hasn't clicked at all times. But again, I think like when you look at the numbers, it's one of those things where I think when people look at the numbers, they realize, okay, this thing has been very efficient and very effective. But when you look at it with your own eyes, I think people are saying, well, why aren't we hitting this pass or why aren't we doing this? And I think there's just an expectation now because of how well he threw the ball late last season, particularly the Oklahoma game, that people are just expecting perfection. And, I don't think that's realistic. So I think that's been probably the most consternation. But I don't know how warranted it is, man. I think we might want to trust the numbers here more than our eyes.
Is there any explanation, Tom, for the disconnect, you think, in terms of them being, top 10 scoring offense, but it maybe not looking the way you envisioned a top 10 passing offense would look?
Yeah, I think it's just because there's a ton of explosive plays and a ton of empty plays. I think it's like the basketball equivalent of a team that shoots a bunch of threes. It's a more efficient way of doing things. And if you hit enough threes, maybe your field goal percentage for the game is down a little bit than a team that banks a bunch of twos home from inside and in the paint. But guess what? You're scoring more points every bucket you make. So I think that's probably the best explanation for it. And I do think also that Jordan's running is a bit overblown. When he breaks the pocket and has an opportunity to run and he turns it down, that's personally when sometimes I get frustrated with what happens. But if you're talking about pocket passing versus design runs, the guy's had a bum shoulder for the better part of a month. Yeah. I think they're trying to stay away from that. And if you look at it, when he needs to run, largely speaking, he has. Like even that second quarter up at Clemson, it's the only quarter that Florida State in regulation scored touchdowns. Jordan's legs was a big part of that equation, especially that first touchdown drive with a 4th down run, and then the touchdown run he has later on in that quarter near the goal line where he calls his own number. Last week, again, a couple of big-time runs too. So he's capable of doing it. The question, I think, is for this weekend against Duke, how much will he have to? Because this defense is much better than the ones they've seen the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, well said. I think most folks feel it's that sort of latter part of your response, Tom, where it's like, all right, man, we're not necessarily saying designed runs, but, count to 2 Mississippi and then be gone with it, man. And trust yourself to protect yourself. But the second he does that and isn't able to protect himself, then it's like, he should have stayed in the pocket. So, Jordan, you can't win, but you're still winning where it matters. That's on the scoreboard. So good job, young man. Ira, looking out to the defense, the sort of way that they're, rotating guys in not only freely, but super early, seemingly to the amateur eye here. How much of this sort of depth and load management will start to pay dividends, you think, for this team, maybe they want to do it more so for December, but will it pay dividends against a Duke team that might not have the horses to roll with the Florida State defensive front that they'll see on Saturday?
No, I mean, I don't think that's going to be a big factor in this game. I do think it's more about just keeping guys healthy and keeping them fresh for later in the season. There's not a huge drop-off. I mean, that's the beauty of having a deep defensive line is you don't have a huge drop-off from, say, Josh Farmer's been starting over Fabian Lovett. Well, Fabian Lovett's, I mean, most teams in college football would love to have Fabian Lovett being your second team defensive tackle. Then you look across the board at even your fourth and fifth and sixth guys, Dennis Briggs and Malcolm Ray and guys like that. They're quality players and they're giving you quality depth. So it's not hurting you to play them in those games. I do think when you play better competition, yeah, you're probably not going to be as liberal with it. I mean, these last 2 weeks, it didn't matter who played defensive tackle. The three of us maybe could have gotten in the rotation probably at times. Again, well, that's an exaggeration. But in terms of some of these teams they played the last couple of weeks, but man, I don't think there's I just think it's going to be what they do to keep those guys fresh for later in the year. But I don't know that's going to change a ton this week. I think maybe later in the year when you get closer to the playoff.
Ira, don't sell yourself short, man. You play with great leverage.
I was more worried about you guys.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think I get around the edge. I don't think I could get past the tackles out there. For you, Tom, I mean, is it kind of an interesting experiment that they're doing with this level of rotation with the amount of talent they have top heavy wise on the defensive line, but giving these younger guys, maybe the more inexperienced guys, some reps? Is that something you think they will see pay dividends here on Saturday? Or again, is it something that it's going to be more so for the long-term big picture?
Well, first of all, I could be a one tech. This is a body built by Stovetop of late boys. So if you need somebody to plug up the middle, I'm much better at it than I was, say, maybe this time last year. But I think it's going to be something that, yes, as Florida State gets into the rivalry games it plays in November, I think that's when you'll start to see the benefits and also the ACC championship of all this rotation. But one thing I'll say about it is sometimes it raises my eyebrows. I know Mike Norvell's been on record saying that, they don't usually get those guys in when the game is in the balance, or, they don't believe that there is a humongous drop-off at some of these positions. But there were moments where the game was in the balance against even a Boston College. It's 10-10 in the second quarter. It's a nip and tuck game late, and you're seeing rotation on the defensive front at linebacker. The Clemson game, wholesale shifts with the linebackers and the defensive ends. That's what they're going to do. Like, whether you agree with it or not, that's what Mike Norvell is about. It's about heavy rotation, maybe proving to the guys that, if you do what you're supposed to do in practice and you have a base level of aptitude, you're going to get in there. So you stay engaged throughout the week of practice. But that's a credo of theirs, especially, in that front six, if you want to say. They're going to rotate a lot of guys. And, I mean, last week was a great example. First drive of the second half, all four defensive linemen were backups. And that's a 14-point ball game at that time. This coaching staff is committed to that rotation, especially that front group.
I will say real quick, Aslan, and I think you're on the right. I do think the rotation gets shortened, kind of like in basketball, when you may play a deeper rotation in the regular season, then shorten it for the playoffs. I do think this is any game that's in doubt, where I think Mike Norvell really seriously thinks the other team can have a big day offensively. I'm guessing they're going to shorten it a little bit. The games we're talking about here, BC got kind of sideways on them, but I don't think they expected that. Thomas Castellanos was making the second start. The point I was trying to make earlier is Syracuse's offense is terrible, and they were not going to run the ball against Florida State's defensive line. So I think those are situations where he feels like there's just nothing that other team can do. If you start playing teams with a pulse, and I don't know that Duke is that team either, because especially if Riley Leonard doesn't play, but in teams that have more offensive weapons, I think my guess is they'll shorten it some.
That's a beautiful thing about this one. It seems like Florida State has not had a worthy adversary in Doak Campbell Stadium. Maybe we'll agree to disagree that Duke can fit that bill when they step inside Doak Campbell at 7:30 on Saturday. We'll get further looks into the Duke Blue Devils and this Florida State matchup on the next segment right here on the Warchant Report, powered by Cummins. Hit the road and follow the Noles during their sensational start in your RV or motorhome, powered by Cummins, a global power leader. The Onan QG 5500 generator is a perfect fit for your fifth wheel or Class A motorhome. It's powerful enough to run not one but two air conditioners with power to spare, and with its exceptionally low level of vibration, the QG 5500 has earned the title of quietest in its class. Its self-diagnostic capabilities, in addition to digital voltage regulation, assure stable, reliable power. Short power connections never a given when you're making pit stops on your travels, and especially when tailgating on the road. And hey, your RV is your home on wheels. Get every ounce out of it with reliable, quiet power from the Onan QG5500 by Cummins. You can save 10% on the QG5500 when you use the promo code TAILGATE, TAILG, then the numeral 8. Visit shop.cummins.com or rv.cummins.com to find a dealer near you. Welcome back in. Warchant Report, powered by Cummins. Irish O'Fell, Tom Lang, Aslan Hudjavandi here, getting you ready for the Florida State Duke Blue Devils game. 7:30, Doak Campbell Stadium Saturday. Pregame show over at Hotel Indigo. Doors open 4 o'clock. Pregame show starts 4:30 sharp. Want to get a deep dive into the Duke Blue Devils? We assigned our own Matt LaSerre the assignment of catching up with Duke Blue Devil radio analyst David Harding, a former Blue Devil himself, to give us a lowdown on how Duke's been going this season.
I'm here with the executive director of the Blue Devil Network and former Duke offensive lineman, Dave Harding. Let's get right into it, Dave. We'll start with the obvious. Riley Leonard, what's his status looking like for this week right now? And what does the offense kind of look like without him? What other pieces are there?
His status is still day-to-day. Obviously, that was kind of what his status was going into last week. He came out onto the field ahead of the NC State game, threw some passes, was out, participating in warm-ups, then ultimately did not go. Similar kind of story this week to this point. Obviously don't know if he'll be warming up or playing, so we'll have to see. To answer your question about what the offense is like with or without him, to be honest, on Saturday against the Wolfpack, Blue Devil offense was the most explosive that it's been this season. And part of that is just the style of defense that NC State ran, kind of a feast or famine type bunch where they're loading up against the run, bringing the house. So when they get there, tough to move the ball. But if you make somebody miss, you can rip a long run or hit a deep ball. Henry is a fantastic passer, especially deep. That's his strength. Even when Riley was healthy, Henry did come in at a few instances this season when the Blue Devils were looking for that deep ball, Hail Mary kind of situation at the end of a half. They feel like he's got a really strong arm and it's very accurate. We saw that early in the game last week. He threw an interception on his opening series during his first start, turned around the next drive and threw a beautiful play on the double move down the field for a touchdown. So the offense, the identity of the offense, very similar with both quarterbacks. Riley's going to give you a little bit more of a dual threat action, likes to run, probably a little bit better athlete on the ground. But this is a group that wants to run the football in the traditional run game. We got 2 very good running backs in Jordan Waters and Jacquez Moore, and an offensive line that's pretty experienced and really talented. Starts with the left tackle and Graham Barton, but a group when they're at their best, they're running the football, just kind of methodically driving down the field, and that's kind of been their calling card. You try not to make too many mistakes, stay on schedule offensively, and find their way into the end zone.
As for the defense, the story here has been all the rotations that Duke does. They put a lot of guys on the field, and you even see that in the stats where it's not a huge disparity. Everything's fairly even. What key pieces are there on this defense, and what do they need to do on Saturday?
No surprise, the guys over at Warchant have a beat on what the strength has been, and I totally agree with you guys. It has been the fact that this is the deepest group on defense that the Blue Devils have seen in many, many years, and it starts along the line of scrimmage. They've got a solid 2 deep, and in some cases, 3 deep at certain positions that they can rotate through to keep their players fresh. The difference I see is really physical play, especially on the interior. Dwayne Carter and Jamion Franklin, 2 players that you should definitely know of. They're the 2 tackles inside, the heart and soul of this defense. Everything kind of starts with them and works its way out. Those 2 have been playing as good a football as anybody else in the ACC, getting on an edge in the run game, finding a way to apply pressure up the middle in the passing game, which obviously causes problems to opposing teams. This defensive line, I think, is the real deal. And you mix that in with a good rotation of players off the edge at defensive end. This is a group that is pretty good at staying well rested during a game and bringing it every single play. I played offensive line in college, played against the Seminoles numerous times. And this is not just related to FSU. It's everybody I played. The defensive lines have a tendency of being hot and cold. When they're really good, they're almost impossible to stop. But then they'll take a few plays off. And I never have seen a defensive front that brings it like this every single time. There's a player by the name of Aaron Donald when I was playing that did that himself individually, and he turned out to be pretty good. But I'm not calling this Duke defensive line a bunch of Aaron Donalds, but in the mindset and the way that they bring to the game of making sure they bring complete effort every time, that's kind of been their winning edge.
Once again, that is Dave Harding, the executive director of the Blue Devil Network and former Duke offensive lineman. Thank you, Dave. Back to you, Aslan.
Thanks to Matt. Thanks to David for that insight. Again, David Harding, insider with Duke Blue Devils. He's the radio analyst for them. So I ask you this question, Tom, then. We can extrapolate and expand more on this matchup. But ultimately, you gave both these coaches an option. You go to Mike Elko, you go to Mike Norvell, and you say, well, I would give you the gift of being able to run effectively and being on time and having manageable third downs, or you'll be able to have the big play offense that you want. Which of those scenarios do you think each coach takes and will be a key for them to pull off the win Saturday night?
That's a really good question, and I saw it on the rundown before the show, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it, so I'll take my best stab, and I'll say that for sure Mike Elko wants to be on schedule. For sure, he definitely wants manageable third down situations to get in a fourth and short if they have to be in one, to take that chance and be aggressive and keep the ball in their hands. I think the recipe to beat Florida State hasn't changed all season long. Even though Florida State's offense has been up and down, it's keep the ball away from Florida State's offense. And the best way you can do that is long and sustained drives. Florida State gets frustrated. Our fans get frustrated. You think about the first quarter against Boston College. They had one possession in that quarter. The second quarter against Virginia Tech, as Virginia Tech is mounting some sort of a comeback, it's capped off by a kick return in the second half, sure. But you think about a 16-play drive that Virginia Tech has, in the second quarter, scores a touchdown, and that takes the air out of Doak Campbell a little bit. The best way to beat Florida State is to take the air out of the ball, be on schedule, and be in third and short. For Mike Norvell, there's just so many playmakers, Ira. I'll pivot to you for him, but there's so many playmakers that I think you probably would rather have the explosiveness because that's what they've been.
Yeah, I honestly I agree with Tom. I think if Duke had Riley Leonard available, I'd maybe have a slightly different answer. But if Riley Leonard doesn't play, and I'm skeptical of how much he's going to play or how effective he will be if he can play. And with that being the case, man, I really think that Duke's going to lean heavily on that defense, lean heavily on trying to keep the ball away from Florida State and play ball control. They've got a very good punter. Florida State's got a great punter too. But I think that the idea there is just trying to control the clock, just trying to kind of do whatever they can do to hang around in this game and see what happens. That's kind of what they did against Notre Dame. Notre Dame could have blown that game open earlier. They didn't do it. Duke hung around, and some good things happened. They ended up getting the lead. I think Mike Norvell is going to try to make big plays. I don't think there's any question about it. I think when you look at the way Duke's going to play, I think they're going to play more aggressively on the edges. I think Florida State's going to get a lot of man coverage, and I think Mike Norvell loves these receivers, and I think you're going to see them take a lot of shots. Duke's going to stack the box, so I don't think Florida State's going to be able to run the ball and do maybe some of the things they'd like to do. I think it's going to be a game sort of like Clemson where Florida State's taking a lot of shots.
There's no simulating what Doak Campbell Stadium is going to be if you're Duke, especially this season because they've only played one road game, Tom, and it's been up in Storrs, Connecticut, or maybe East Hartford at Rensselaer Stadium against UConn. But, man, this Duke team, their defensive front, I think Mike Norvell said they've got 10 guys that can rotate. I don't know if that was almost being hyperbolic, but I know they have a lot of upperclassmen. We spoke to Dwayne Carter at ACC kickoff. Their offensive line is also heavily laden with talent, or rather veteran talent. I know they have a freshman quarterback, which is a huge piece of the puzzle. I don't get the sense they're going to get scared by this moment. I think they're going to kind of embrace it. I don't know. I don't see this game getting away from them often or early, rather. How important do you think home field is, or is that something that we're just kind of, I don't want to say having fun with, but maybe, giving a little too much impact to what that could be against a team that seems to be pretty battle tested?
Yeah, I think when Duke's offense is on the field, it might be a little bit different. To clarify, I think Duke's had a neutral site game, even though they hosted Notre Dame. A lot of Notre Dame fans traveled to Duke for that one, and you could hear them in that primetime broadcast. But if you have a freshman quarterback playing and Riley Leonard's not available, I know that there's a lot of aggressive quotes from Elko in the media this week. But if you got a freshman in there and it's loud and you can't think straight, I think that does play a role. But I think the better thing that it does for Florida State is the fact that they've played home 3 weeks in a row. That matters a lot. That was one of the adversities of the first month of the season was they were never home. I mean, you're playing a neutral site game, you get Southern Miss on a shortish week, and then you go play on the road for a couple of weeks. You've been able to play at home, creature comforts for a few weeks, the treatment centers, all that kind of stuff, not being on a plane after a game when in those critical moments when your body needs to recover. Also, the rotation of playing a lot of guys against these two previous opponents. I think that matters more than the home atmosphere. So, Aslan, in short, I think, when Clemson's defensive front is out there, they're not going to care about the atmosphere one bit. It's about, can they whip Florida State's offensive line across from the field from them? And a couple of those guys can for stretches of the game. And that's what gets fun to watch on Saturday.
I've heard people toss the word exposed around, Ira. I mean, how much of the crowd this national spotlight in Doak Campbell Stadium might play into Duke being exposed on Saturday night?
I don't know if I'd say exposed because I think that they're a legitimate team. Like, it's not like that they've had a couple of favorable matchups. I mean, I think they're a solid football team, but I do think Florida State's a better football team. And I do think the fact that Florida State's at home, I think they're going to win the game, and we'll get to predictions later. But what I think will happen, though, if they don't have Riley Leonard available, is it could be tough sledding for them if Florida State gets out early. The crowd will be a factor if Florida State gets out early. Now, if Florida State doesn't do anything offensively, then the crowd won't be much of a factor because they won't have much to cheer for. But Florida State can make a couple plays. Again, they're going to get opportunities for shot plays and not turn the ball over. I think that's going to be a huge key in this game. If you look at what teams have gotten in trouble against Duke, it's when they've turned the ball over. Florida State, Jordan Travis, you have to knock on wood, Florida State fans. But Florida State's been very good about not turning the ball over. Jordan particularly is very good about not turning the ball over. And that's the kind of thing I think if Florida State plays a clean game and doesn't give Duke reason to be in the game, then I think the crowd could become a factor because, again, I think it's going to be harder, especially if Florida State starts scoring points, for Duke to keep up if they don't have Riley Leonard.
Sounds like we're all going to pick Florida State. I don't know. Got to stick around. One more break. Last segment. Predictions coming up on the Warchant Report, powered by Cummins. You can feel the security of having a global power leader in your own backyard when you're backed up by a Cummins home generator. For more than 100 years, Cummins has powered everything from heavy-duty trucks to trains and dependable power generation to hospitals, data centers, and stadiums around the world. Now you and your family can rely on that same expertise to get the latest in power technology with a Cummins home generator for your home. Be prepared for bad weather, rolling outages, ice storms, and more. And whether it's Wi-Fi or weeks' worth of groceries in your fridge and freezer, stay powered up with a Cummins home generator. Visit homegenerators.cummins.com to utilize their home generator size calculator to find the ideal generator to power your home or to request an on-site assessment. And don't forget, you can save 10% off various models of portable power stations, portable generators, and RV generators at shop.cummins.com with the promo code TAILGATE, TAILG, numeral 8. Welcome back in. Warchant Report, powered by Cummins. Your favorite part of the show is where we make predictions. Three guys here on screen will make our predictions, but first we're going to let the rest of the staff over at warchant.com let us know who they think is going to win the game between Duke and Florida State.
Florida State in prime time. The Noles have never lost to the Blue Devils, and I don't think that's going to change this week. But that said, Duke is really well coached by Mike Elko. I think this is going to be a tougher game than most FSU fans expect. We don't know about Riley Leonard at the time I'm taping this, but whether he plays or not, I don't think he's going to quite be 100% if he does in this game with that high ankle sprain. Here's the thing that makes me nervous. Duke's defense is legit. They have the number 2 ranked passing efficiency defense and the number 4 scoring defense. So this may be the game, I think, where Florida State does not hit the 30 mark. I think that streak breaks. But what doesn't break is their streak against the Blue Devils and their streak of being undefeated. Give me the Noles not covering this week, 27-17.
What's up, Nole fans? It's your favorite guy here on Warchant, giving you my prediction. Look, I think this is the best defense Florida State's probably played, with the exception of Clemson, and they're even. But without Riley Leonard being 100%, even if he does play, so he won't be able to move like he normally is, I just think it's going to be too tough for Duke to score a ton of points. I think Florida State will get to 30, barely, and so I'm looking at a 30-14 final, Florida State.
All right, gang, I can speak, I promise. Forgive the cold, everybody. Time to make a pick. Been pretty good with these so far this year. Let's try to keep it rolling. I'll go, I don't know, Florida State, maybe a rocky road early on. Wears Duke down. Duke doesn't have much in the way of offense for the game. So let's shoot for 34, Florida State 34, Duke 14. 34-14. Get it together, Cameron. 34-14, Florida State over Duke. That's my pick.
I think Florida State's going to make another statement win. LSU was early in the season. I think people are starting to forget about it. It's time to make people remember again, right? I think Florida State wins this game 45-21. Even if Riley Leonard does play, him having that hurt ankle will still be very beneficial to Florida State. He won't be able to run around as much. And keep in mind, he has more rushing touchdowns than he does passing touchdowns. So even if he's playing, I think the Florida State, it'll be easier to contain him, and they will cruise to a victory Saturday night.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for being here, everybody. As you know, it is the Warchant Report powered by Cummins. Check out shop.cummins.com. Use that promo code TAILGATE, TAILG, numeral 8, to save 10% off the P2500i portable generator, as well as numerous power stations, including the 200, 300, 600, and 1,000 models. No matter where you're tailgating, whether it be outside your favorite bar, in the parking lot, on the road, the power stations, clutch. The portable generators, even more clutch. Shop.cummins.com. Go check them out. Promo code TAILGATE. Tom, start us off here, man. Saturday night, 7:30, ABC, Florida State playing Duke. This is the big one, maybe for the home schedule this season. Who would have thunk it? Something's got to give. Florida State scored 30 points in 12 straight games. Penn State's got more than them, the only active streak that's longer. Meanwhile, Mike Elko has not lost the game by more than one possession while at Duke. So try to figure out that math. Give us your prediction on Saturday, Tom Lane.
I think if Florida State can clear the mid-20s in this game, they're safe. That's the easy way to put it. The offense doesn't have to be lights out. No 40-burger necessary for Florida State to come away with a win in this game. I just think this is one where they will lean on Duke until Duke eventually falls over. Whether Riley starts or not, Riley Leonard starts or not, or you have a backup quarterback in, the defense is on a roll. This Duke offense isn't dynamic anyway. Even if they have their star quarterback, there's an element of the quarterback run there, but it's not that dynamic of an offense. So all those things being said, I'm very interested to see where FSU's offense decides to go attack Duke, what part of the field, and does Duke stack up against the run like Ira said, or do they sit back like they did against Clemson and play on the edges a little bit more and double the receivers? At any rate, Florida State in a runaway here. It's not in the first half, but they pull away in the second half. 31-10, Florida State.
Ira, you're shaking your head. Was that the number in your mind?
So I had 31-10, but I talked myself out of it. Okay. And I'm going with 27-10. I just think this is a bad spot for Duke. I think it's a good spot for Florida State. And I think if I'm Mike Elko, I'm not risking Riley Leonard getting injured in this game worse than he is already, and it affecting their ability to win some of these other games they have down the line. If you play him in this game, you may not win anyway, and then you may risk him damaging that ankle further, and it may cost you 3 or 4 other losses later this season. So I think my guess is he doesn't play. We'll see on Saturday night. But I also think Florida State's a better team. I think this is, as Tom said earlier, being home this whole month, I think has been good for this team. They're getting healthier. I think Duke is going to get Florida State's best shot, and I think Florida State's going to pull away in this game. And I'm talking myself back into 31-10. 31-10.
Consensus.
Man, I think this is me just projecting. Again, I've said it on the podcast, Corey Wake Up Warchant. I love this is not a knock on my job. Love my job. I'm in the top 1% of people that can say that and actually mean it. But man, I've been bored out of my mind in the press box the last 2 weeks because I knew that those teams had no shot at beating Florida State. And I don't think Duke will beat Florida State, but they have a shot. There's things that could happen in this game. So it's going to make me excited to see Florida State finally get someone's best shot in Doak and see how they handle it. To say 24-17, that just kind of keeps me within the margin of error for Mike Elko's loss, but I can't imagine Duke would score 17 points on this defense. But I'm going to say 24-17. I just think Florida State will be too much. They are the better team. And Duke's quarterback, I think Henry Beelan will make some plays. I think he'll extend some drives with his legs, but not enough to sustain enough drives to keep the ball away from Florida State, as Tom was hinting at that being your recipe and making this upset happen. So Florida State survives, hits the road. We're on our way to Charlotte after this one. That's crazy, guys, right? I mean, you beat Duke, you've pretty much punched your ticket to going to Charlotte, which is, the number one goal of your season heading into it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I would say one thing just from all of our predictions. Folks out there, we like the total of 41. We like the total of 41. I think we have consensus there. But you're right, Aslan. If they take care of this, it's the inside track of the inside track.
Okay. So the under, everybody. Not that we promote it. Not only on this program, but every other program on warchant.com. Use that to your own discretion. Entertainment purposes, obviously. That's a wrap for us. On behalf of Tom Lang, Ira Schofel, I'm Aslan Hajavani. Thanks so much for watching this edition of the Warchant Report powered by Cummins. Don't forget, pregame show over at Hotel Indigo. Doors open 4 o'clock, 4:30. The show starts. Before that, though, happy hour at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, 2475 Appalachia Parkway. Corey Clark, Jeff Cameron, Tom Lang. I might be there hanging out too. Come say hi. Giveaways too, right? We give away tickets and stuff now, apparently, Tom, at the Friday meetup.
And gift cards as well. There was a point predictor contest score predictor contest last week. So if you don't like 31-10 and you think we stink, then go ahead, put it on an index card at the CP on a Friday.
Again, for Ira, Tom, I'm Aslan. Thanks for watching this edition of the Warchant Report powered by Cummins.